Tommy, nice to see you.
Nice to see you, Greta.
And big news, The Spy Who Jumped Off the Screen. This is your fourth novel, but your first thriller.
First thriller.
Actually, it's interesting. I've read some sort of descriptions of it by people. They've called it a sophisticated thriller, and perhaps one of the more intriguing descriptions, Bill Clinton said, it's an utterly contemporary puzzle.
Well, I hope so. I mean, it's about the privatization of evil. I mean, the hero, who is called Ty Hunter, and is 32 when we meet him, in the world's #1 movie star, a former covert op who's pressed back into service by the president, is able to penetrate layers where good and bad people are side by side and sometimes indistinguishable. So part of the puzzle of the book is figuring out who's good and bad in a world where people don't retreat to the separate sides to their base camps every night, but actually mingle.
Well, it's got every element. It has Hollywood, it has politics, nuclear weapons, military. It has a little bit of everything.
Yeah, but that's the way the world has become. I mean, different disciplines have now merged. You see, Hollywood and politics have been merged for a long time at certain levels, and different kinds of people. You have, used to be, once upon a time when I was growing up, we had two big forces in the world, this country and the Soviet Union, in opposition. Now there are all kinds of shadowy groups and individuals who are brokering odd arrangements between the shadowy groups or amongst them. That's what the book's theme is.
What provoke you to write a thriller? I mean, this is a new, fiction is not a new genre for you, but a thriller is.
That's true, and I've always been interested in it. And I've always wanted to write one, but I didn't want to write one until I had an idea that wasn't derivative of a lot of thrillers out there. I have a lot of respect for that genre. And there's so many good ones out there, and have been historically, that I've wanted to either contribute something new or not do it. And it took two bursts of inspiration, which first for the character of Ty Hunter, the movie star spy, which came to me all of a sudden. And I made a false start as I began with him. And then I had the idea for the plot of this book, just the beginning of the plot of the book.
So did the plot develop as you wrote it, or did you all of a sudden sit there one day and think, you know, this would be a great thriller, this is the plot, now I have to figure out how to lay it out in a narrative? Or do you develop it as you write it?
I developed it as I wrote it, but it was a little bit of both of those things. I had the character of Ty Hunter, and I was working on a different course with him, and when I thought it needed to be sharper, and suddenly I thought of the central element, the scheme by which nuclear weapons were secreted within and then ferreted out of the old Soviet Union at the time it dissolved. I called a friend of mine who knew about a lot of things like this and asked if this was plausible. To my pleasure, because as a writer it was nice to know it was, and my horror, because citizen, I felt more danger, he said it was. And then on that hinge, I just wrote, and the story developed on its own.
You know, it's funny, you read a book, and sometimes you read a book, you think, you know, this would make a great movie. I mean, this is the type of thriller where you could see, you know, making a movie out of it.
Well, I hope so.
I hope so,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, that would be great.
All right, now I can't leave you without talking about the man who wrote the introduction to it, who is, how do you know Bill Clinton?
Well, by an accident of the alphabet, two last names beginning with C. We were a few doors away from each other as freshmen at Georgetown Foreign Service School, later became roommates and have been friends ever since.
What do you think of when you first saw him? Do you remember first seeing him, by the way?
Absolutely. It's the first night that we were there.
And?
I thought, this is an interesting character. I've never met anyone like this before.
Why?
Well, he was very gregarious and, particularly imposing in a certain way. I mean, in a good way. You know, this was a guy who was a nice guy, and also a guy with a lot of ability. We had a dorm meeting, I remember, and he stood out.
Yeah, but sometimes people like that in college, you know, they're just sort of, you know, they have grandiose plans, and they say they're going to do these things.
He had grandiose plans.
He succeeded in getting them. He became president, but I'm just saying that, did you think that he was going to be president?
Well, I don't think you can ever say that about anybody, because there's so many ifs between that. I knew he would be successful. I mean, sure, not that first night, but as we got to know each other, I knew he was going to be a successful person. Becoming president has lots of little detours that affect many good people. But the great thing about him is he really hasn't changed. I think if you asked anybody who's known him a long time, though he's had a remarkable journey in his life, he's the same.
friends sort of drop in and drop out of our lives. You've actually, I mean, every time I've seen President Clinton, I think, at social events, because we live here in Washington, you see them all the time. You're always there.
Well,
I mean, you're very close to him.
Yes, but I'm not the only one. All of our roommates have stayed very close and good friends, and a lot of other people as well. It's nice. I mean, as you get older, these long friendships mean more than you thought they ever would.
And indeed, he wrote a very long introduction to this.
Well, when I first had a first draft of this book, I knew that he was a big fan of thrillers, and so I sent it to him because he'd read a lot of them. He's a smart man, and I said, "What do you think?" And he was very kind and edited it with some very,
which is typical probably of him a little bit.
Yeah, a very rigorous editing job.
He did.
Very helpful, speeding it along.
But it's a fascinating thriller, and it's The Spy Who Jumped Off the Screen. But I think it's going to be jumping on the big screen. Actually, that'll be you have to rename it when it becomes a movie. I think.
Well, I don't know. I love that.
But if it's on the big screen, it's going to be The Spy Who Jumped Off the Screen and ended up on the big screen.
that would be wonderful. That was the expression that the old movie moguls used to use about the people like Judy Garland or Clark Gable, who just had such presences that on the screen they were larger than life.
Tommy, thank you.
Thank you, Greta. Lovely to be with you.